when the U.S. government was giving the current standard issue infantry rifle.
Hey guys, welcome to Whiskey, Lead, and Steel. Feelings hurt while you wait. The official podcast of Aggressive Defensive Solutions. And if you're quiet for just a second, you might hear the Navy flying overhead. Or maybe not. We'll see.
Keeping us safe.
Keeping us safe.
Rust pickers, as the great Santini called them.
Well, that's good. So you know, going back to something like the great Santini. So today we're going to talk about the evolution of kind of modern gunfighting schools,
which is a pretty cool thing when you stop to think about it.
Yeah, it is. So what do you think?
All right.
Where do we start?
Yeah. So I've got a pretty cool perspective on this. I think in that. So anybody who's older than us, and was involved in law enforcement, special operations, that kind of thing, then they've heard of Mid-South, Ray Chapman, Thunder Ranch, but everybody, it seems like, has heard of Blackwater, USA, and the Blackwater Lodge. And a lot of people feel different ways about that, but I'm actually pretty proud of the fact that I was early on. I was one of the staff instructors down at Blackwater, USA. I went to work there in October of '99. We had like 9 ranges and no grass on the berms yet. There were like 4 buildings on the property, and then it blew up. But where and how that came from, and so there's the whole evolution of it is actually pretty interesting when you stop thinking about it. So a guy by the name of Jeff Cooper, Colonel Cooper, Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel reservist type, came back from World War II and came back from Korea, and found essentially gunfighting, especially pistol craft, that was his big thing, was just kind of lacking back in the old days. I mean, you stood kind of like a fencing stance broadways and stuck your 1911 out there at arm's length and blasted away and, shot your 1911 at 50 yards for qualification and standing stock still. And what he found from his combat experience was that really didn't work out all that well. And then the other aspect of it too was kind of the psychological aspect of it. So he started Gunsight out in the Southwest, and for a long time Gunsight was it. That's all there was. And it took a little while to get some traction, but then it became the thing. And I mean, early on, the Green Beret guys, the guys who were Green Berets, and the SEAL teams, and LAPD, their SWAT team, and tactical teams, all those guys, they all ended up going out there, and he wrote a bunch of good books that were really good for the time. They've evolved some. And then, other people realized what he was doing, and they started copying him. You had Ray Chapman, who was a competitive shooter and a championship shooter who kind of did his own thing down at Mid-South and brought people in. And over the years, it grew and grew and grew. So now we kind of have, and the facilities are kind of falling off, and I think that's because most military and law enforcement agencies have figured out they've become less risk averse over the years, and so they're willing to train on their facility.
Most definitely.
Yeah, because when we were both young men in the military in the Cold War, right, was the brigadier general who owned whatever army fort you were on, did he want you guys running and gunning?
No, everything was zero risk, right? Everything was zero risk. Everything, of course, early on there was the zero defect concept.
Oh yeah.
Right, but the zero risk, right? Nobody, you can't do any training in which somebody's going to
could get hurt.
Because
then I'm not going to pick up another star.
Right. Well, it was one of our. It wasn't combat because it was the years before that. One of the peacekeeping missions. I remember a friend of mine being at the change command for the theater commander.
Yeah.
And his proudest accomplishment was he lost no soldiers. And don't get me wrong, I mean, it's great, But he had spent his entire time as a theater commander keeping everyone inside the wire, and we were nothing more than a presence that was in country.
Yeah.
Right? There was a lot of bad things that had backslid in that region, and I don't remember all of the details or who it was, but it was, again, we're going back to pre 9/11. We're going back to the 90s, and the mindset was very, very different at that point.
And risk averse.
I can't lose a soldier because that looks bad on me, and we're in a different spot now. I mean, I never want to lose any soldiers, but at the same time, in order to train for missions, in order to do missions, it's a dangerous game, right?
Yeah.
War fighting is a dangerous game.
Yeah. And if you're going to fight like you're trained, like if you're going to fight like you train, then you have to train like you fight. And if you are training the way that you are fighting, it doesn't matter what the training is. You have to get out there and get on the edge. There's a reason that these guys who are pilots, the guys who are screaming around over our head right now, they're out here doing touch and goes in the dark. With instruments only. Well, that's fucking dangerous. But if you're going to put that thing down in the middle of the night in the North Atlantic in a rainstorm, you're going to have to practice doing it. And you're going to have to. So much of the training that we do, and that's some of the stuff that we come up with as a means of training at the competitions, is okay, get out of breath, get your heart rate up, create some fog in your brain, try to confuse yourself, all of that, so that you can recreate the stress to it, so that you can work through the stress, and also so that you can practice doing outside of the box stuff and stuff that's not inherently safe.
And I think what you just said is right, hit the nail on the head. I believe that when we were going through the 90s, and of course before that, there was the we conflated unsafe and dangerous.
Yes.
Right? And those in my mind, and the later part of my career, are two different things.
Oh, yeah.
And number one, you do a risk assessment, and you try to get rid of the things that are unsafe.
Yes.
Right? But some training, there's a level of inherent danger, and you work to minimize that, right? Yeah. That's the reason why we have the crazy big risk assessments that we used to do.
Protocols.
Right? And I think that's it. I think one of the things that the military has gotten better with is understanding how to manage that risk. Because don't get me wrong, as I talked about this earlier, putting people in those situations wasn't because I don't care and we should just run around. If they die, they die. Not at all, right? That was not my point. I'm not looking for angry comments on that, but it was the fact that we do have to increase the level of risk in order to do that. Going to Desert Storm, we engaged in live fire maneuver under live fire, right? As a unit, right? I'm putting 60 rounds on an objective while I've got my platoon mates, moving in on the objective, and they pop smoke. I see smoke. We lifted and shifted, but they were running into a hail of friendly fire.
Yeah.
I look back at that as one of those things that was I think when I was going to Desert Storm, the first time I realized, we're going to war.
Yeah.
Because we're training and I can kill people.
Yep. Yeah.
In this training exercise.
Yeah.
And that's, and it was controlled, and we did the crawl, we did the walk, we did the run, and there was a lot of controls over that in order to make sure.
Yeah.
But,
because you can't get your concealed weapons permit last weekend and then this weekend go start doing building clearing. Live.
You shouldn't.
In your own house when you got home from the movies. Do people go to the movies anymore?
Yeah, I went.
When you came back from your
weekend.
friend's house where you were Netflixing and
I
chilling.
went this
What'd you
past
say?
weekend. Ant-Man and Wasp. It's a Marvel.
It came out a long time ago.
No. This is the one that just came out.
Oh, this is the one Adrian was talking about.
Yeah,
It's got Paul Rudd in it.
it was actually pretty good.
Yeah,
It was actually pretty good.
Yeah, okay, all right, whatever.
I'm not gonna talk about it, but it was pretty good. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they did a really good job, I think, with what they had to work with. They did a great job.
Yeah, because Scarlett Johansson wasn't in it, was she?
No, she wasn't. All right.
So anyway,
But anyway,
yeah.
but
So that's what you got to do.
so we did. You're right. We did run through some stuff.
Yes.
In getting from, pre-World War II, right? I mean,
Yeah.
everything was stand there and arm behind the back and
Yeah.
out with the pistol.
Yeah.
We were reading one of the monographs that we'd gotten that was talking about the bullet weight or bullet size and caliber and all that.
Yeah.
And, it was shortly there after World War II, the Army went back and reintroduced or introduced for the rifle qualifications and actually a qualification that actually required some skill
Yeah.
in different
Not just to test
different
marksmanship.
terrains, right? Yeah, it was using barricades and there's rubble piles and firing from different types of obstacles. And of course, they did away with that because it was hard, right?
Yes.
Right, and it became hard to do that. So we fall back to here's a defensive fighting position, foxhole, right, and here go lay on the ground, right, and the Army's now reintroduced, a prescriptive set of qualifications that requires you to show competency over different types of skills. But but I think you're right. Looking back at the evolution of some of those schools, bringing of course Jeff Cooper was more towards some law enforcement and those types of aspects. Right?
Yeah.
So
So when he got started, it was one of those ideas that was a revolutionary idea, and so you had a lot of folks in the law enforcement community, not the military community, but the law enforcement community, said, "Hey, this is kind of a good idea." So people started coming up, and of course, back then also, that's when IPSC and USPSA and IDPA all got started, and so you had all these cops and former military people who were out there shooting competitions. So there was a huge. Obviously, I don't think there were more people shooting competitions then, but I think there was a greater percentage of the population was doing it because a greater percentage of the population had been in the military.
well, you had the CMP.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That was the big
yeah.
rise of the CMP during that phase as well. So that was the come shooting CMP and you do enough, and we'll give you an M1.
We'll give you $1,000.
Right. You get $1,000 for shooting.
Yeah, but so those schools came out, and then
because we should be an armed population.
yes, we should
Right.
be.
That was
We should be a
mentality.
well-trained armed population.
And that was the point of the civilian marksmanship program, right?
So then the U.S. government was giving away, if you qualified, the current standard issue infantry rifle. So that would be like if they gave away semi-automatic M16s. Oh, AR-15s. So the government said, you should have the same guns that the soldiers have. And here you can have one.
Right.
In fact, if you come shoot enough, you can have a bunch of them.
Right. You can have more.
Yeah.
You can have more than one.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Because
How things have changed.
because you can arm your whole block.
You could. You
Right.
could. And then you could get on Eisenhower's brand new interstate and go anywhere you need to defeat the communists.
That's right.
Not the good old days.
That was the good old days. That was the good old days. Okay, so that was a rabbit hole.
That was a rabbit hole.
So we saw Alice.
We did.
We chased her around a little bit. Let's come back up.
All right.
But back to Jeff Cooper.
Yes.
Right. So Jeff Cooper What most people know Jeff Cooper for is
the Cooper color code, right? He's the guy who came up with that. And that's one of the big things that that Gunsight was about, was not just the mechanics of it, but it was also the whole mindset about being a gunfighter. So he came up with the Cooper color code, and the Cooper color code stayed like it was, I want to say, until the late 70s, early 80s. And I forget who it was. If I don't know this is a fact, and if I'm giving credit to the wrong guy, I hope the right guy doesn't get mad and want to punch me in the face.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, but I want to say maybe Masad Ayub had something to do with this. I think so. But anyway.
Okay. Well, what was the original?
So the original one was white, yellow, orange, and red. Right? Which makes sense when you figure these are Jarhead, because he wasn't worried about panic. So white, of course, being absolutely at rest, not knowing what's going on, and being oblivious to your surroundings, right? Which is where the vast majority of people find themselves. And the nice thing about the color code is that it's applicable to everything. It's applicable to driving down the road, certainly applicable to carrying a gun for defensive purposes or for offensive purposes. So you've got white, which is right there, curled up on the couch watching Yellowstone with your favorite bourbon, with your young lady on your arm. Then you've got yellow, and yellow is just the baseline. You're aware that there's the potential for problems, right? You get in your car and you drive down the interstate. You go, okay, there could be an idiot on his cell phone, so I need to watch out for that.
We live in yellow, right? Outside the house, that's.
We should. The vast majority of people
do
not.
You finish, and I have a different addition to the color code. Go ahead.
So you've got yellow, which is just being aware that there could be problems out there, and then so you recognize there could be problems, so I should be aware of that, right? And then you move into orange, and orange is when you've determined that there is a likely problem, there's a likely threat, there's a likely issue, and you decide then primary, secondary, tertiary plan, and you figure what your trigger point is, right? So when I was a cop, what they said was, so when you're in 7-Eleven getting your coffee, the guy comes in and it's July in Virginia and he's wearing a coat, a big heavy coat, and he's looking around and he's all sketchy, then you go, oh, this is something, and you go from yellow while I'm there getting my coffee to orange. This guy could be a problem, and if he becomes a problem, then I'm going to do this. Realistically, I think probably a better analogy is you're driving down some road that you're familiar with, and you're coming up on an intersection that you're familiar with, that people blow that light all the time. So you go, okay, I'm coming up to the intersection of whatever, Independence and Virginia Beach Boulevard, and I know that they have a tendency to run that light. So I'm going to go all the way through the intersection. So I'm going to start watching the cross street as I come up. And I see that there's a car coming and he's moving quick. And I go, okay. Look around and I go, all right, if he doesn't get on his brakes and stop, if he runs through the intersection, because I've got a green light, if he runs, I'm going to get in the left-hand lane and lock up my brakes and hope that he goes past me. If I get there before he does and he blows through the stop bar, then I'm going to get in the left-hand lane, create some space, get on the gas, haul ass through, and hopefully he'll go behind me. Primary and secondary plan. And then he looks up from his cell phone, realizes he's about to blow the light, and he screeches to a halt just before sliding across the bar, and so I don't have to do any of that. So I'm in yellow, I'm in orange rather, ready to make the jump to red, which is, here's my plan of action, here's my trigger. We didn't hit the trigger. Now we go right back to yellow. Right? And so it's a very fluid situation. We'll talk about the last one that got added after you tell me what you were talking about.
Yeah, so I threw this out in an earlier podcast, and I was waiting for a face to be made by you, but I talked about people walking around in green.
Me making faces?
Yeah, you making a face. Green. So green is that the yellow that we should be in. That people who understand the Cooper color code and they understand that they're supposed to be situationally aware that are walking around that aren't.
Oh.
So it's the ones that traditionally we would say they're in white. But these are the people that
we know better.
They know better. They'll talk a game, but there's the obviousness that they are completely and totally situationally unaware. And in a situation where they should at least be aware of their surroundings, and they're just not.
But they have all their kit.
Well, they have all their kids.
So like they have an open carry gun, and they're sitting with their back. They're sitting at the counter of the restaurant with their back to the whole room with their high point or
whatever,
maybe a canic, right? They got a canic. They're hanging it out there because they want to see if anybody will steal it.
Drinking a beer.
Drinking a beer.
Right, but it's the belief. To me, it is the belief that they're aware of their surroundings, with the obviousness that they're fully unaware of their surroundings.
Like a school resource officer who's not wearing any body armor.
That could be a good one.
Yeah, I like that. Green. That's pretty good. When they should be in yellow, but they're not.
Yeah,
because they're fucking hammerheads. All right.
So what is the last one? which was not part of Jeff Cooper's
original... So Jeff Cooper originally didn't come up with this one.
Right.
And it's black. And black is panic. Black is you are entirely unable to assist in your own defense or do anything. You have vapor locked, you have target fit, whatever it is. You are slack-jawed, glassy-eyed, standing around and unable to do any good. And here's why and how it happens. You can be awake. You can be in bed asleep, right? Getting REM sleep. So you're in absolute condition white, right? And a weird noise that your brain does not recognize happens in the house, and your eyes snap open, and your brain goes, "There was a weird noise that we're not used to," and you're immediately in condition yellow. And then you listen, and then nothing happens. And then you stay in yellow, you fall back asleep, and away you go. You can make that move pretty quick. You're in white, you wake up, you go, what the fuck was that? You hear glass break, and you hear something scuffling around downstairs. You've now made the leap from yellow, you're well deep into orange because you've already said, we have recognized there is a problem, there is a threat, here's our plan. We're now in the process of enacting the plan. The plan is, if we're smart, if we don't have any kids that we got to go rescue, we jump up, grab the gun out of the nightstand, run to the bedroom door, lock the door. We've already enacted the primary plan, call 911, and away we go. We were in white, we came to yellow, we slid quickly through orange, and we got into red. Right? You can make the moves pretty quick. You can go from white through yellow pretty quickly into orange. You can go from yellow, slide right through orange, and get into red pretty quick. What you cannot do, nobody's ever able to do, is you're at the point where you should be in yellow, or you should be in orange, and you're in white. You can't make the direct move from white to red.
Right. And
so what happens is you overload. And black comes in because it's panic and you pass out and the whole world is black.
So to your earlier traffic, right, example, right? You're traveling up, lights green, I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't need to worry about, I don't really need to worry about the car. And he blows through the light, and by the time you realize he's blown through the light, you went from I'm good to panic.
Yeah. To holy shit, you've locked up your brakes, and now instead of, like I said, ride along, you lock up the brakes, and now instead of him catching you on your rear quarter panel, he's T-boned you.
Right.
Yeah, because you made a panic move.
Right.
One of the best examples of people who were, and I'm not throwing rocks at anybody. This is a observation. Thank God I wasn't there, and I hope everybody who was there, who was capable of being okay, is now okay. But if you watched any of the video after the first tower came down, right? So we have like 35, 40 minutes on 9/11 where the Twin Towers on fire. And there's videos of people standing in the street looking at this building 4 and 5 blocks away, and it's burning. And then it collapses, right? And then you see people wandering through the streets like zombies. Wide-eyed, slack-jawed, glassy, incapable of making a decision to get the fuck out of the roadway. They're just walking. They're in condition black. They've overloaded. And I say that, you know, if you were watching a high-rise building burn, you should probably have gotten the fuck off the street. And I'm not throwing rocks at these people, because this is one of those things where you go, I can't believe this is happening. Well, that's what leads to panic.
But at the time, right, there was no belief of New Yorkers that one of those that could have happened.
Sure.
Right. So you go from watching this, oh my goodness, this is horrific, to it's coming down, and you're right.
Yeah.
Because the reality is that there was no, you know, we're going back in history so far now, right?
Yeah.
That there was no belief that this could actually be happening.
Yeah.
And then suddenly when it starts coming down, you're right. You go from watching it burn to,
oh my God,
in a war zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So so Jeff Cooper, creator of the Modern Gunfighter School. If you've been to Mid-South or Chapman Academy or Blackwater or any of these places, if you went to any of those places in the United States and did any training, you owe a beer and a thanks to Jeff Cooper and his crew, because he's the guy who invented that idea. Because there were plenty of people who had the ability to do it and nobody had done it. He's the guy who was the groundbreaker on that. And then, on top of that, he's the guy who came up with the Cooper Color Code, and that whole concept just revolutionized combative mindset for military and law enforcement, and then of course for civilians.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of where they came from, and it's pretty cool to have, you know, working with this place. Yeah,
you're part of that history.
Yeah,
right?
It's kind of cool.
You're part of that history. Yeah. So guys, thanks. Appreciate you watching and bearing with us. And nobody should have gotten any feelings hurt this week, unless you're taking credit for Jeff Cooper's work. Just saying.
Yeah.
Look, all works are mostly derivative. So, you know, he definitely was the innovative idea, and then everything else is a set of derivative works that have built on what he's done. So, you know, stay tuned. And
quick shout out. I want to throw a shout out to Mike Breeny at Firearms Performance Enhancements in Virginia Beach. If you've got a firearm and you want to make it better, he's the guy to call. He's the guy who does all the work on our guns. Great dude, great business. If you need it done, Mike can get it done. And if you are in the Baltimore area or Delaware area, anything like that, and you're interested in getting some good training and you don't want to make the hike down to Virginia Beach and hang out with us, I understand that. Check out our buddy Miguel Bosch, Mike Bosch, at guncommander.com. Mike's a former federal agent. I worked with him. He's a former Border Patrol tactical guy. Great dude, retired, and he's a Patriot, retired commissioned officer, United States Coast Guard. Good dude. So check out Gun Commander, Firearms Performance Enhancements. Hope you guys had a good time, and thanks for listening to us ramble about Scarlett Johansson.
I'll catch you next time. One of the peacekeeping missions, I remember a friend of mine being at the change command for the theater commander.
Yeah.
And his proudest his proudest accomplishment was he lost no soldiers.